this
All
week.
right, ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? Thank you. My name is Lexy Higgins, for those of you that have not gotten an opportunity to meet with yet. I am the Assistant Manager in the Grassroots Division of the NRA-ILA. Big acronym stands for the Institute for Legislative Action, which is the political arm, the lobbying arm of the NRA. I want to take just a minute to point out a few of our special guests that you're going to hear from alongside myself tonight. We have Hopkins, who's your local area grassroots coordinator. We have Judy, who is your state liaison out here. We have Representative Hunt, and we have Representative Rodney. Thank you. I apologize. We have a lot of these representatives trying to keep everyone straight. Thank you all for coming out this evening. Those of you here to listen to us and our representatives. I'm going to keep this introduction brief. I'm going to start with a little bit of an overview of how this is going to go. Obviously, I'm going to start by speaking with you a little bit about 594. I'm sure you guys are all aware of what happened last year. We're going to talk a little bit about that, what we did, and then kind of go into a legislative update from Judy, our state liaison. So after 594 passed, what happened in Olympia earlier this year, we're going to hear from our lawmakers, and then I'm going to go through some of the tips and tools we have for communicating effectively with your lawmakers. So, to start us off, I'm sure everyone here knows who this individual is, but for those of you that don't, this is former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg. He is a billionaire. He's one of the top political contributors in the entire country, and he's made it very clear that his mission is to take away our guns. He has made no bones about it. He spent $30 million last year alone to try to advance his anti-gun agenda all over the country. Unfortunately for us, Washington was and still is one of his targeted states. How does he do this? What do I mean? Just throw money at everything? Well, not quite. He's very targeted in how he spends his money. He uses two main front groups to advance his agenda. One of which I'm sure you've heard of is Every Town for Gun Safety. That is one of his front groups that he uses to try to peddle his misinformation. Another one of the groups I'm sure you've heard of is Moms Demand Action. These are two relatively powerful anti-gun groups that Mayor Bloomberg has no problem shelling out millions of dollars to help him advance his anti-gun agenda. So that's Mayor Bloomberg. He's not going anywhere, and that's part of why we're here this evening, because we're not going anywhere either, and we need all of you to get involved in this fight. So what happened in Washington? Last year, Mayor Bloomberg decided to invest part of his billions here in the state of Washington, particularly with Initiative 594. Now we could sit here and talk for hours about 594 and not exhaust everything there is to say about it, so I'm going to keep it real brief. The idea behind Initiative 594 was an 18-page background check bill. They tried to say it's universal background checks. That's all this is about. Well, first thing I'm going to let you guys know is that universal background checks are impossible because criminals are never going to comply with the law. So there's no such thing as a universal background check. What Initiative 594 actually does is criminalize private traces. Again, we have a little bit of information on the back table about exactly what is next with Initiative 594. Excuse me. I'm starting to lose my voice. I apologize. No, I'm good, really. I'm starting to lose my voice. I've been talking quite a bit. But moving forward, with Initiative 594, I just want to let you guys know a little bit of what we did. So how many of you were involved in Initiative 594's fight last year? Those of you that were, thank you. And as you guys know, we've got our folks here this evening. We've got Keely, who is here north of Seattle. We've got Adina, who is here south of Seattle, here in this area for us, being the NRA, fighting against Initiative 594. We knocked on almost 20,000 doors, made almost 10,000 phone calls, distributed tens of thousands of pieces of literature, yard signs, did radio, and did internet ads, trying to educate folks on what this initiative was. Unfortunately, come election day, the results way that we wanted them to. We all know this. And here's a map of the state of Washington, the breakdown on how everyone voted on Initiative 594. And as you can see, the problem is right here. This is where we're having trouble. We're not having trouble out in the eastern part of the state. It's right here, west of the mountains, which is why that's where we've chosen to focus a lot of our efforts. That's why we're here tonight. We were down in Vancouver last night. We'll be up in Everett tomorrow night, and we're going to be back a couple more times this year trying to do more meetings like this to educate folks on what exactly is going on and how we can be more effective moving forward. I know you guys are probably wondering what the heck this map represents. The red dots are our Second Amendment activist centers. And our Second Amendment activist centers, how many of you know what that is? How many of you read about it in the folder? A couple of you.
I read about it in the folder.
Well, thank you. So our Second Amendment activist centers are distribution points, our meeting places, our hubs, because obviously we can't be everywhere all the time. So these Second Amendment activist centers we use to allow folks to meet and to distribute our materials. We have about 50 here in the state of Washington, and we're always looking for more. So if you know a pro-gun business in the area that you think might be a good place to distribute our materials, it's a free program for them, go ahead and talk to either Keely or myself after the meeting. And as you can see, there are also some stars on the map. And these blue stars are our election volunteer coordinators. How many of you have heard of that program? Well, I hope so, Jerry. You are one of our EBCs. Bringing me to my next point. So, Jerry Gibbs is another one of our special guests here this evening. Stand up and just say hi to everyone real quick.
Hello.
Jerry is our closest election volunteer coordinator. So when Keely can't be here, when I can't be here, Jerry is here on the ground, tirelessly working to make sure that all of our Second Amendment rights are protected. So thank you, Jerry. And I'm sure you all will get a chance to meet with him after the meeting today to go ahead and swap information, because he's your hyper-local point of contact. Like I said, I'm here from Virginia. Keely's here for the whole state of Washington, but Jerry is right here in your backyard, able to help us coordinate activities. So, now what? Initiative 594 passed. What can we do moving forward? Well, obviously, we can't give up. We can't just say, oh, well, it passed, we're going to give up. No way. And that's part of what this meeting is about here this evening, is what happened this past legislative session after 594 and how you can help us moving forward in the next legislative session, because the next one is going to be critical. So, I'm going to go ahead and bring up Brian Judy, who, like I said, is our state liaison, who's been working tirelessly in Olympia for us to make sure that your rights are protected. So, Brian?
Good evening, gun lobby. I always open up my talk group with NRA members that way, and I do so both affectionately because I'm an NRA Life member. I've been an NRA Life member since about 1981, so I'm one of you folks when I'm not part-time lobbyist, or full-time lobbyist, sometimes in this day, but also seriously, affectionately, but also dead seriously, because in fact, you are the gun lobby. It's not me. It's not the NRA lobbyist in Olympia who is the gun lobby. It is seriously you folks who truly give NRA the power that it has. You know, compared to what Lexy just told you, that Michael Bloomberg spent $30 million last year. One person spent $30 million. His contributions were only about $3 million of the $10 million spent. A lot of other billionaires will spend a bunch of money here in Washington, pushing 594. But he spent $30 million. The NRA-ILA's total budget, legislative and political budget for election year is usually around $20 million. So one person spent 50% more than the entire NRA as an organization did. So our two big resources are clearly the contributions that come in, but more importantly is the grassroots. And that's where you folks come in, and thus it is you that is in fact the gun lobby. And it is you that provides the power and the influence. When I'm in Olympia, I'm going to introduce a couple of the legislators who are our best friends in Olympia in a little bit, and they can tell you, they can talk about the process and about hearing from lobbyists. And lobbyists are important because there's 100 different issues politicians have to deal with, and nobody can be an expert on everything. So, it's like drinking from a fire hose down there. But they will also tell you that when it comes to the whole political process, when lobbyists come in, they're particularly influential if they're speaking on behalf of other people. And there are 90,000 NRA members in the state of Washington. So a lot of the legislators down there, I mean, these guys here tonight, they're believers. They're with us. They're part of the gun lobby. They're both NRA members. But a lot of the other legislators aren't. But when they know that when I come into their office, I'm representing maybe 3,000 of their constituents. So can't emphasize enough how important you folks are. And obviously you're here in the middle of July on a gorgeous, gorgeous day when there's a lot of better things to be doing. So you're kind of the snowball, the core of the snowball. And what we need you to do, first of all, thank you so much for being here, but what you need to do is go from here, and every one of you probably knows 5 people, maybe 10, maybe 20 in a club or a group, other shooters, fellow hunters, that you can get involved in. And we need to start with you as a nucleus and then grow this thing. But like Lexy was saying, this battle is getting really it's increasing. It's getting bad. It's getting worse. So it's not enough to have have me, as your lobbyist in Olympia, or our federal lobbyist in D.C. We really need you to get more involved, and particularly as these billionaires commit to spending more money, we're never going to have the money. So we need to counter them with grassroots resources. So get involved in the legislative process, and the legislature's in January or April, or this year, July, 3 special sessions. I didn't think I could even get this old these guys, but I figured they just got the heck out of here after being in session for 90 extra days. But be involved in the legislative process, talking to your legislators during session, and be involved in the political process. And that I can't emphasize enough. If you're involved in helping out candidates get elected, they know, they see you there on the campaign trail working with them, and when they get to Olympia and you come to talk to them, they're already going to have a relationship with you. It's going to increase your effectiveness. So, and let's see, what's the old line? If you get involved early on and help people get elected, or if you have somebody in there who you go to talk to during the legislative process and they're not listening to you, or they listen to you and they're on the other side, then that's even more reason to get involved in the political process and try to find somebody to replace them. What's the old joke? If you can't change your legislator's mind, change your legislator. I mean that's not so much the joke. The joke is, let's see, try not to butcher this one. Politicians, anti-gun politicians are like diapers. They need to be changed. And for the same reason. So 2014, that's not politicians, it's anti-gun politicians. We don't want you guys to be changed. So 2014 marked what I believe is going to be I think it's going to be a watershed year. It really marked a turning point in the battle for the Second Amendment. Frustrated in Washington, you're frustrated with their inability to roll over the gun lobby. And again, they talk a lot about the NRA and the NRA lobbyists in Olympia, but that's the gun lobby is you folks. Frustrated in their ability to run over the gun lobby in Olympia, they went the initiative route to 594. And what they found was that, and listen carefully to this, because this is going to go against what most people think, but what they found is that unlike in Olympia, legislative votes could not be bought. Well, I should say, unlike in the legislative arena. In the legislative arena, votes could not be bought. But that's exactly what they did with 594. Because what happens in the legislative process is legislators pore over bills. They have staff, there's personal staff, there's committee staff, and they study these bills. All bills have to go to a committee, and the committee evaluates these bills. They look at them, they rip them apart, they hear public input, they listen to the public input from both sides. There's a lot of time and effort spent on every bill. And they can see through the baloney. They can cut through it. You know, these guys understand that, you know, the kind of bills that we're opposing, they know why we oppose it. They oppose it for the same reason. But a lot of other members, you know, they're not so sure, legislators in the middle, so they hear it all. And they get a real good handle on what the bills really do. But on the ballot, it's not the same thing. They write the, you know, proponents, 594, a bunch of anti-gun attorneys, they wrote this thing, they put it on the ballot. And then, you know, we're out there trying to expose what it really does, and they rarely said anything accurate about what it truly did. So they just had a bunch of glossy mailings. You know, they had $10 million. They ran a great campaign. You know, anybody can run a great campaign with $10 million. But they had all this glossy, fluffy pieces, you know, targeting a certain piece to target suburban women, and another piece that, you know, they had the money and resources to micro-target and get out whatever little message they wanted to get. It generally didn't have a lot to do with the 18 pages Lexy was talking about of regulatory excess that was in that thing. So they were able to, with all these mailings and 30-second commercials that didn't really talk about the issues, you know, reach out to all these low information voters who are never going to read the bill, let alone have the, you know, the ability and staff people to help them analyze it, and they just vote on what they think it did. Well, you know, it's just background checks on sales. Well, no, that's not at all what it did. It was so much more than that. But the general voter didn't know what it was doing, and they didn't care about it. So they spent $10 million. They misrepresented it. They didn't really talk about what it truly did. As we pointed out, what it truly did, they just called us liars. I mean, it was so frustrating, so ironic that these people who are obfuscating and misrepresenting and just leading with dishonesty are calling us the liars. But you know, that's what it is. You know, it's the initiative process. Personally, I hate the initiative process. I would do away with the initiative process. We're not a democracy. We're a republic, a constitutional republic, and democracy, in my opinion, is moral rule. And you know, they were only at 59% based on what they did. So let me talk just a little bit about the session. As expected, they came in just all barrels blazing, so to speak. They had about 6 or 7 really bad bills. They focused on a couple of them, really narrowed it down to one this year. The two that they focused on were, the first one was safe storage. It's a bill that would make it a crime if you store a gun in your home and a minor accessed the gun and then misused it somehow. The problem with this bill is a couple problems with it, but one is there's already a reckless endangerment statute on the books that can be used to prosecute this exact behavior. If you're negligent, you leave you're reckless, you leave a gun out, and a kid gets it, then you can be charged and prosecuted under reckless endangerment. The second, not really a problem, but the point is, if you look at the statistics, the Washington Department of Health statistics, these are not NRA statistics, this is from the Washington State Government Department of Health. You look at accidents among kids, there's not even a category for firearms. Firearms are so low, they're just part of the other. You know, the things that kill kids, obviously the big one is motor vehicle accidents, and then, you know, things around the house is drowning, poisoning, choking, ingestion of objects, falls. I mean, all kinds of things are much more dangerous and cause many more deaths. So we'll do questions in a little bit. We get through this. You know, we're trying to do is, to us, is demonize firearms. We're trying to use the revised code of Washington to single out firearms and demonize firearms. And we even proposed an alternative. We said, okay, if you want it, it's all about the children. And how many? I wish I had $1 for every time I heard it's about the children. We would say the children. If it's really about the children, I would say, then let's start at the top of the list. If you want to protect children, why are you starting at the bottom? So we drafted language and said, run this. It says, if you store any item capable of causing injury, illness, or death to a child, instead of, you just take out firearm and put any item capable of causing injury or death to a child. That way, we're getting at all the things that really kill children. Well, you can't do that. That would mean that, storing Clorox under the counter, if your kid gets it and drinks it and poisons himself, then you could be charged. Well, aren't you about saving kids? You know, isn't a hurt or dead child, a hurt or dead, does it matter what causes the harm? If this is about saving children, then let's go after irresponsible parenting. Let's go after irresponsibility at large. Don't single out guns. Anyway, they wouldn't have any of that, so that bill just kind of went by the wayside. The other bill that they pushed was a bill that would create what's called extreme risk protection orders. Now, during 594, their big line was, we don't want to take people's guns away. We just want simple background checks. Well, we all know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I know where these people are going. You know, 594 was about handgun registration, which is a precursor for come in and take it. That's where these progressives want to go. So they're saying, we don't want to take people's guns. Well, the first bill they had is this extreme risk protection order bill. It would do what? Well, it would allow law enforcement or family members to petition a court to come take people's guns. And, allegedly it was, people who had, who were a danger to themselves or others. But this bill was fraught with due process problems. It had just many issues. It was really about, and really the bottom line, again, you're focusing in on guns. Well, what about knives? What about cars? There was a case in Reno, Nevada, some time ago, where probably a crazy person, the summer evenings in Reno, everybody's out on the sidewalk walking between casinos, with drinks in their hands. Some guy took his SUV and just mowed a bunch of them down on the sidewalk. So what about that? We're going to take, if you have a person who supposedly is a danger to himself and others, you're going to take away his guns, but what about his knives? What about his car? What about any of the other baseball? So it's not really addressing the problem. Again, it's going after the gun. So those are probably the two biggest issues that I anticipate we're going to see in 2016 when the legislation is introduced in the odd year and carries over to the even year. So we're going to have another barn burner of a session in 2016, and I'm optimistic that we'll be able to to hold the line again, because we've got a lot of support in the legislature, both from Republicans and we have a core of really solid program Democrats that are solidly with us. And right now the makeup of the state house is 51 Democrats and 47 Republicans. So hopefully that's going to change here soon, and I think these guys are going to talk a little bit about that. But realize that we have to have 49 votes to kill bad bills. So we have to have some program Democrats. A lot of people think that NRA should not be supporting Democrats. A lot of Democrats think NRA stands for the National Republican Association. But we are nonpartisan. We support those who support the right to keep our arms. There are a lot more Republicans, but there are some Democrats out there who are solid, and we need them. It's a numbers game. We need them. So I'm gonna stop there. Real quick, do you have a question or comment?
Well, back when you were discussing other lethal objects, I was reading somewhere, I forget where it was, that hammer killed more people nationwide, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so again, you know, we shouldn't be focused on the item. You need to focus on the person. If there's a problem with people who are dangerous to self or others, then get them out of society, get them getting the treatment and help they need. So let's hold questions. I think we're going to do questions at the end. So let me introduce. We have two of your elected officials here. They want to come up together and do a little tag team. So why don't you guys come up and I'll introduce you and who's who. So first of all. First of all, we have Representative Graham Hunt. Graham is from the 2nd District, which is just a little bit south and a little bit east. Everybody looks at it. About right here is where it starts. Graham is he's an NRA member, life member, right? NRA life member. He was appointed to the legislature in early 2014, so he had to run in 14. That was his first time on the ballot. He's a veteran from Iraq and Afghanistan. Just one of the most solid program guys we have in Olympia. Representative Jay Rodney. He's been in the House longer. He was elected in 2004, I believe. Marine Colonel, 25 years in the Marines. Another
Go Navy.
Another NRA member. Jay is the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. That's important because all firearms-related legislation goes to the Judiciary Committee. So he takes the lead. I work real closely with him. Graham he's one of the most supportive program guys there. So the two of them work together. We had a lot of meetings together with a few of the other program ringleaders. These guys are invaluable there, so I'm going to let them take off and talk to you a little bit about the world down there.
Thanks, Brian. I guess I'll go first in terms of student background. And I say, whenever I get around Brian and Graham, I feel really short. These guys are really big. But fortunately, handguns are the equalizer, right? But so I've been in the legislature since 2004. My district is East King County, and my district actually voted in favor of 594, like most of the King County suburban districts did. And I think that is really our challenge, is to convince these suburban districts. We're never going to, Capitol Hill is Capitol Hill, right? We're never going to convince Capitol Hill. They want to rely on others for their protection. And the funny saying about the Seattle Police Department is, when seconds count, they're only minutes away. And I think that the people of Seattle are fine with that. But the battleground really is convincing these suburban voters to address what really I think is at the core of the Second Amendment. I mean, why do we even have a Second Amendment? We have a Second Amendment really to guarantee liberty. All of the other liberties and civil rights are meaningless if there is no way for citizens to guarantee those liberties. And that is I think, in a nutshell, why we have a Second Amendment. Because all power under our constitutional republic resides with the people. And the people must have the ability to not only protect themselves, self-defense as a fundamental right, but also to ensure that all of the other liberties guaranteed by the Bill of Rights can be backed up and made real. And as Brian indicated, there's a battle in Olympia. It's not just in Olympia, it's in D.C., it's in every state house. It's a battle between progressives who've got this worldview that we should all have utopia on earth and all be like Europe, like France or Canada, where in Canada, I don't know if you realize this, but if you cannot defend your home in Canada. If an intruder enters into your home at the dark of night, you and your family, you and your loved ones must retreat. Must retreat. That's the law of Canada. And if you take steps to defend yourself, you could be prosecuted for murder. If you murder, or if you defend your property, defend your family, and kill that intruder or seriously injure that intruder. That is the kind of world that progressives want, because for progressives, really, it's not about childhood safety. It's not about, protecting the innocent. It's about control. It's about control. And they do not like our constitutional republic, the scheme of government envisioned by the founders that has large power residing in the people. And that's abhorrent to elitist progressives like Mayor Bloomberg and like lots and lots of Democrats now in Olympia. So the stakes could not be higher. This is a battleground district. This district is battleground. We have the opportunity to pick up this district in November and bring those numbers from 51 Democrats down to 50, which brings us up to 48. And that really kind of gives us a functional majority on gun issues because of those 2 or 3 Democrats who are going to vote with us. So this is a battleground district, so I cannot emphasize how important your efforts are going to be over the next several months in getting that grassroots activism geared up and running. Because this is really, it's about the future of the fate of our state and our nation. I'm fearful for the fate of our nation after what has happened over the last 8 years. Over
2 months.
Over 2 months. So, what he has done to this nation, we see, in which they want to replicate here in Washington State. The stakes are very serious, and we've got to get activated, we've got to get energized, and it's going to take also more than just door to door, it's going to take some money as well. And so any way that we can be generous in those efforts is very helpful. This is battleground, and this is when we really got to start working. What's your group?
So I'm Graham Hunt, the second legislative district in Maui. All right, I'm in Federal Way. People know where Ording is. There are people in Puyallup that don't know where Ording is. That's fantastic. And then the comes in Ording is on Eatonville down to Olympia. How many of you in this room right now would say that the government is broken? Okay,
I'm raising 2 hands.
At all. Well, I'm going to stop and tell you that it's not broken. In fact, it's working. It's working. The problem is you've got the wrong people working. We have a constitutional republic, and we're not taking part in it. I mean, I agree with you. We've got some pretty bad stuff happening. Our government is appearing broken, but actually the truth of the matter is, it's working. The problem is you've got the wrong players. The wrong players. Right now, this is the 30th legislative district. We have an opportunity to pick up the seat. I want to talk to you for a moment. I've only been in Olympia. This is my 2nd year. The first year I was there, we were, what was the numbers? 44, 43.
Yeah.
There were 43 Republicans. There's 98 in the House. I'm not talking about the Senate. There were 43. The rest were Democrats. When I was appointed to the House and I was showing up and I'm trying to work across the aisle, right, trying to bridge that divide and figure out what we can have in common to get some things done. Because we all know if we all stand and stick in the mud, it's not going to go anywhere. We've got to reach across on some issues. The problem is all of them basically told me, go pound sand. We're not interested in talking to you. We don't need you. We have the majority. You guys, there's only 43 of you. We can pass everything. You don't have to show up. Well, this year it was different. This year, there's 47. All of a sudden, I had people from the other side of the aisle that were shunning me a year ago, reaching out saying, hey, can we go have lunch or something? I want to talk to you about a couple of issues, just kind of see where you land on it. Think you could sponsor a bill with me, co-sponsor it? All of a sudden, people were reaching across the aisle. That's what 4 seats did. Now, we're talking about taking it from just 47 to taking it to 48. That is huge, guys. It is huge. But we cannot do it without people being involved and being engaged. That means having that conversation with your neighbor and saying, are you registered to vote? Which way do you plan on doing it? You've got to know the candidates. We can't just vote because there's an R or a D. Granted, I'm biased. I'm Republican. I'll tell you I'm Republican. But I'm a conservative constitutionalist first. And that's where I stand. I've got to know who is that candidate? So you've got Terry Hickle running, and I'd reach out to her, say, hey Terry, I want to talk to you. I want to go doorbell with you and ask you some issues, figure out where you stand on these different things. Get to know your candidates. Brian spoke of it a little bit. When you work on the campaign, and then you pick up a phone or send an email to one of us sitting down there in Olympia, guess who gets answered quick? The guys that we know. Especially if you helped and you were part of that process. You're going to get answered a whole lot faster. It's just the truth of the matter. If you have a telemarketer call you and they're talking to you about something, you can call them back right away. Who does? Anybody? But if your neighbor calls you from across the street and says, hey, I need to borrow a wrench or something, you call them back? Absolutely. That's what it is. That's really what it is. You've got to be involved. In order to have a functioning republic, then we have to have the people involved in the government. You've got to have it. And I know that you all believe that, or you wouldn't be here. So this isn't me preaching to you, but we need this room. Look, Comfort Inn shouldn't be able to house us. We should have to rent out the Tacoma Dome. I mean, we're talking about the Second Amendment rights. We should have to rent out the Tacoma Dome because people are saying we've had enough, we've had enough, we've had enough. Representative Rodney and I sponsored some pretty key pieces of legislation. Some of them didn't even get a hearing, but I'm going to tell you about a couple of them. We've heard of 594. We had some legislation that would have completely debunked 594 and killed it. Gone. Gutted it, gone. We had another version of that said, okay, 594 was just about the gun shows, right? Okay, so you have to do that if you have gun shows, but not if you're a concealed weapons permit and it's not at a gun show. We tried that option. We tried saying, look, people need to vote on it again, send it back through a referendum. That didn't work, but let me tell you, the people were confused because in some districts, like my own in part of Pierce County, 594 passed, but you know what else passed? 591. How could that happen? The two don't work, right? One undoes the other. So if both of them passed, which would have been great if 591 just passed, we wouldn't have this issue, we'd have another one, but at least this wouldn't be happening. But people voted for both because they didn't understand. I've even had 594 people that were knocking on doors, talk to me later and said, yeah, we didn't know I did that. Yeah. Did you not read it? It's only 18 pages, and really the content was in the last couple. So, and it was in the voters pamphlet, and the NRA did a mailing. But, you know, anybody here own a business? Anybody here own a business? Anybody here work in marketing? If you own a business, your hand should still be up. How many times, I also own a business, how many times do you have to hit somebody with information before they retain it? Some people say 7, some people say 10, some people say 3, some people, it's over. The key is more than once. And it's all different mediums, right? Some are television, some are radio, some are print, some are Facebook, you name it. But you've got to reach out to them in all those different ways. But you want to know what's more effective than all of them? Networks, talking to people, word of mouth, and saying, hey, Mr. Gibbs, let me ask you, would there be a problem if we handed a firearm back and forth? Should that have to be a background check if we're going to shoot at the firearm range? It's having that kind of conversation. I really don't know who's going to, but it's having that kind of conversation with people. Because I was at lunch with a person across the aisle today, and talking about 594, and she didn't understand that we couldn't go to the range and just hand things back and forth. That would be a problem. She said, hey, I want you to teach me how to shoot a firearm. I said, I'd love to. The problem is I'm not going to do a background check and a transfer to give it to you. And then get it back.
With a background check. Yeah.
Transfer. Not going to go through that process. She didn't understand that. We need to do a better job of educating, and it's a whole lot harder when somebody's done with $30 million to fight it. But we can beat it. We can absolutely beat it.
How many veterans do we have out here today? Thank you for your service. When I miss my son Ty, he's NROTC Marine Option. My daughter Kaylin, I won't let her go on the Marine Corps.
I wouldn't let anybody go to the Marine Corps.
so I mean, we can open up for some questions. I think I saw some hands, but just to emphasize that we are all part of a team, and this is coming into real critical time for the next 90 days. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if there was any discussion about exposing 594 in the paper. See, I looked at home in Spokane. Other people could see what those 18 pages were. All I saw on TV was gun registration.
Well,
That's the editorial.
So the 18 pages is public. It was also sent out by the Secretary of State, the voters pamphlet. The problem with sending that out through the papers is most of the time they're just as liberal and progressive, and that's not what they want you to hear. It doesn't sell. And people, let's face it, guys, we're in 30-second sound bites now. That's news. 30-second sound bites, and that's the attention span too. 30-second sound bites, and if it's not something that catches their eye quick and they're interested in, it's not going to go anywhere. And so 18 pages, you can't spell that out in a 30-second sound bite. You're going to have to do it in a whole lot of sound bites and make it really interesting to get it to catch on. The show in the back of the red shirt.
Have you guys thought of encouraging a judicial challenge? Because the big problem with it is there's been no attempt at, there's been not even a token attempt at enforcement. Forcing enforcement would allow a successful judicial challenge.
Can I address
That's
that?
a great one. Yeah, great question.
Second Amendment Foundation did file.
And this is a deal
Yeah,
that
the
she
problem
closed
is
with
they
this
had no
county.
standing.
Yeah.
I understand that, but it is being challenged because there were two cases that were not addressed in the dismissal, and that was the McDonald case in Chicago and the Heller case out of DC, which made the Second Amendment a fundamental right, which it should have been all along. But they said, central core to Second Amendment is your right to self-defense, and therefore it is a fundamental right. But that wasn't addressed. I think that the federal judge that was before, just wanted to get it out of his courtroom. But there is an appeal being done on that dismissal. So we may see something come to fruition, but you're exactly right. No one is enforcing it, so no one's getting arrested under 594. Therefore, some of the courts are going to say we can't challenge it.
Okay.
But
We need somebody to get arrested first, really.
Okay.
To have standing.
yeah.
Who volunteers for that?
Seriously.
Okay, now we get to find
Yes.
a sheriff to arrest them.
Something really interesting. In the voters pamphlet, there are two candidates in CTAC, running for CTAC City Council. One is Sally Andrew. The other one is Leanna Records.
Let's go ahead and lunch with her today.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, she may be on our side.
Leanna Gregerson is also a state representative.
Right.
And also the mayor of CTAC. And looking I spoke with Sal, and she's definitely in it.
Well, one just asked me to take her to a range and teach her how to shoot.
But anyway, I looked in the voters pamphlet, and both of them running for CTAC City Council. You would think they would have to live in CTAC, but they're both using the same PO lines.
I couldn't tell you there, that's a PDC issue.
Where they live.
Just to make a point on the enforcement issue, we talk about it, and I know there are people who would volunteer to be the one to have it enforced against, but you can volunteer to have it enforced against you, but that's not going to do anything unless you have a law enforcement agency who wants to enforce it against you. And most of law enforcement was opposed to 594. There were virtually no law enforcement that supported it. We had 27 out of the 38 sheriffs opposed to it. We had the Washington Council of Police and Sheriffs, the major rank and file law enforcement organizations, say they were opposed to it. Cops don't like this thing. They realize it's not going to do anything. So I think, and I think the other side realized that, And what you've been hearing is it's not about background checks. It's not enforcing that. What this was about was really two things. Getting the handgun registration, which is what 594 does, and two, taking an incremental step. That's what the progressives do. They're taking it one step at a time. It's not about enforcement. And I think, the only time this may be enforced is if they arrest some scumbag, on some with drugs and all kinds of other things, and they find out that there was a private transfer, they'll throw this on top of it.
Well, and Ryan's right. This is an incremental step that they're taking. But let me tell you where they want to end up. A couple years ago, there was a bill introduced in the Senate that, when combined with this safe storage law, the bill, if that had passed, this bill in the state Senate would give law enforcement the right to enter any home without a warrant. They want a police state. They want a police state. That's where they want to end up.
Okay. I'm a couple of minutes, and I'll be the first one in the room to admit I'm not a Republican, I'm a Democrat, but I'm completely for That's only because I'm required to put something down in order to vote. Doesn't necessarily mean what I believe. Okay? What I don't like, what bothers me the most, is whether you have a representative that's Republican or a representative that's Democrat. When you go and talk to them, they don't really always do what you're asking them to do because somebody else is telling them something different. I don't know how many times, and I did a lot of work for several years about education funding. And I spent a lot of time looking at talking to legislators about education bills. There was a bill that was on the table that had a fundamental design on how to budget school districts. It was a great idea. But nobody wanted to do it because it didn't do enough. It stalled it out, and now because we're still trying to figure out how to fund schools. But if we would have done that back then, you guys would have been a heck of a lot closer to meeting the McCleary Act than you are now.
Yeah.
Same thing goes to guns. I mean, I've talked to my legislators in my district many times. They know where I stand. Some of them are gun owners themselves, but they don't vote that way.
Well, you got to look at the grading, the NRA grades, and Brian, I just want to give kudos to Brian and Adina. They worked tirelessly on your behalf down in Olympia. They are there in the trenches with Graham and I every day of session. So I'm going to give you a hand, Brian. Thank you for all of the gradings. You have to look at the grades that the NRA gives every representative and senator, and that's a good guide in terms of whether or not your legislators are listening to you on these issues.
Since you brought up grades, I have to talk about one. So there's the counterpart to the NRA, the arch nemesis is the WAGR, the Washington Alliance for Gun Responsibility. Have you heard of it? They're really behind fighting. Well, I'm the second most hated legislator in the state. Yeah, to the WAGR.
All right.
I scored negative 18.88%.
How'd you go below zero?
Like the NRA rates everybody when it comes to dog catching.
Got some questions back here?
I just wondered, does it do any good, if your legislator is anti-gun, does it really do any good to write them a letter and tell them how you feel, or they just say, quit gun led?
So I think there's a couple of that. First, yes, it always is good for you to write a letter. It's also, the other thing, since we're on that, I knock on a lot of doors. I think you guys would imagine that. I knock on a lot of doors. Jay knocks on a lot of doors. I hear at the doorsteps, and I don't care if people are registered to vote or not. I knock on the doors because I don't know why the little reports. I just knock. I hear a lot of people say, I don't vote because my vote doesn't matter. And I hear it more than you can possibly imagine. And the reason that we're in the situation we're in now is because there's a lot of people who feel their vote doesn't matter. It's the same as with a letter. It absolutely matters, and we have to vote. First and foremost, when you send a letter, you're going on the record of saying something to that legislator at least. It may not be public, but it's going to that legislator at least. When you vote, you're on a public record saying that this percentage of people like or dislike what's happening. And that's crucial. It's crucial. We may not win every issue, but it's really nice when you can stop and say that I had 187,000 people in this area that said no to that. And that's huge. It could, think about what it could be. I mean, there's so many statistics that say that people, you know, if you just talk about conservative Christians, I think they've said that there's something like 110,000 or maybe 100 million, I don't remember. There's a ton of people that aren't voting because they feel that their vote doesn't matter. And so I would first and foremost say it absolutely matters, send your letter. Secondly, if your legislator doesn't agree with you on that issue, don't just send it to them. Send it to all the legislators. Send it to a couple of legislators. Send it to legislators, for example, with the scoring that Brian Judy has, or the NRA has that Brian works on. Send it to them too, because then we could actually go to them and say, you know, I got a letter from somebody in your district that says they don't like what you're doing. And we do. Go ahead, sorry.
Can I make a point on that issue too and tie it into 594? Does your vote matter? 594 passed with 59%, right? We all know that. Call it 60%. But the turnout in that election was under 60%. So 60% of 60% is about 30%. Only 1 out of 3 voters voted, or only 1 out of 3 registered voters in Washington voted for 594. 594 did not pass with the majority of the voters. It passed with a majority of the voters who bothered to go to election day. And again, that comes back to the importance of grassroots, the importance of every one of us going and getting every person we know to get involved. If every gun owner had voted in 594, it would have been defeated. We would have beat the $10 million. But a lot of our people sat home.
And now it takes us a 2/3 majority for us to change it in the first 2 years.
And one, you don't have to stay home anymore. Yeah, if you stay home, because it's all mail-in ballots, you got no excuse.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. Basic question for you. You talked about rankings for elected officials. The problem I have is that, yeah, you can get a grade A through F on the legislature, and to get your voters pamphlet, you might get a short paragraph about that long about who's running. But the one thing I don't know is where do I go, or how do I find out what an elected official's actual voting record is? Because most times I haven't got a clue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, real simply, you can go on if you have a computer, you can go on the website, the legislature's website. You can check. There's a button. You can click a link for a bill, and you can show you all the votes on that bill, or subject. You can do by subject matter, or you can do bill number. So, and then also, you know, you can call your legislator's office if there's a specific issue that you know went to a vote. Then call that office.
More a matter of a case of, the second member with the legislature, quite frequently with the legislature, you can tell more about how that legislation is actually going to vote, like when it was, including the second member.
Right. So there's also an organization called Washington Votes, WashingtonVotes.org, and I don't, if you Google that, you'll find it. It might be law votes, I'm not sure if it's WashingtonVotes.org. Just Google that, and there's an organization, I don't know, you can even actually get alerted to key items on how your legislators are voting or what things are coming up on things that you'd like or dislike. And they'll send you an email saying this is how this bill's coming out and this legislator voted this or that.
And also with respect to specific gun issues and NRA issues, you know, Lexy and Keeley in your packets have orange cards to sign up for ILA Frontlines, and there's ways to get signed up. And if you're signed up, you'll get special alerts. And during session, you'll get alerts on all the main bills. And the main bills that you're hearing about in NRA alerts are the bills that we're using to evaluate legislators when it comes to election
I
time.
get those emails, the NRA-ILA, and if you sign up, that's our legislative arm. And
What's the best form of communication? Letter, email, or phone call? Don't say all.
Yeah.
Which one?
You know, I would say, you want to have a written record, so either a letter or an email, whatever I think is best for you. I think the reality is that a lot of legislators don't read emails. A lot of them do, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them, have staff answer them. A personalized email has a much better chance of being read by that individual legislator. You get, there are so many organizations that give their stock email script to their 10,000 members, and you get, 1,000 of the same emails. And so, but make it personal, and you want to have a record, and then you also want to make sure that you talk to the legislative assistant of that office to make sure that it was received, because they're the kind of the filter.
Yeah, I was going to say email follow-up.
Yeah.
And what do you guys think? What do you guys think about the legislative hotline? The legislative hotline. How is that effective?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
One of the things I've done to fairly good effect is make sure that the other people they're responsible to are listed in carbon copy when you send an email. That way they know that other people have seen the same information you just sent them.
And one gentleman just mentioned, it's very clear. The most effective form of communication is coming from somebody they know. I mean, I can tell you that when I see an email from somebody I know, like it or not, when I see an email from somebody I know, I'm going to have to read it and respond to it. And if you're the one that's been in the trenches, working with them, talking with them, you've met with them on specific issues, they're going to know your name, and they're going to see it come through, and they're going to answer it. And so there's nothing more effective than reaching out and saying, hey, I want to get to know you.
Yeah, especially when it's this big. I just want to say one quick thing too, because as a ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, I sit for a lot of committee hearings, and I can tell you that the other side, they are masters. They are brilliant at how they organize their folks to come down to and testify. And the 594 campaign was they really tugged at the heartstrings regarding domestic violence issues and trying to equate background checks with protection against domestic violence, which we all know is ridiculous. So, we tend to think in terms of logic and the rationality of our arguments. The arguments are premised in the Constitution and so forth. The other side can debate us on the merits. They have to pull the heartstrings. But I think we need to start having that, meeting them toe-to-toe on that same kind of battlefront, where we need to kind of claim the language and have folks prepared to come down to Olympia to give that good testimony. I mean, there's nothing more powerful in Olympia than a woman NRA member who can debunk the myth that all women are afraid of guns. I mean, those kinds of things we really need to have you all be prepared to do, especially next session when we know that the junk is going to come back. There's going to be some junk bills that are going to come back, and they're going to attempt to tug at the heartstrings again. And so we've got to be prepared to meet that message.
I know that over the last several years I've been watching the ILA alerts. Don't sit on them. The second you get it, you've got to take the time to respond to it, to not only the committee that's seeing the bill and every number on it, but your local legislature, whether you voted for it or not, and tell them who you are, what you think is right or wrong about this, and what you believe they ought to do about it. And then you call them, particularly the local ones, because they will get to know your name and they will get to know who you are if you keep it up.
I'll also tell you that take time in your email, because if it is read, well, first of all, if it's not a form letter, it's probably going to get read. And if it's really nasty, you're going to turn them off before you even think about it.
Yeah, be polite.
So be polite.
I want to show you a video of my daughter shooting a shotgun. This is what has to be the future of the NRA right here. I'll take it. There she is. Yeah. It's a pretty good shot, too.
Yeah, and look around this room. There's a lot of old dudes. You know, we need to bring young folks and more women. You know, next meeting, bring you know, girlfriends, wives, daughters, because we need to not only expand the numbers, but we need to expand the diversity.
Absolutely.
I mean, progressive is all about diversity.
Okay, I think that's time for a couple more. Gary.
What about, well, you get an email from NRA-ILA or even somebody else that has contact your legislator, and I put in my zip code, and they're everybody from the president up on down. They have a form thing, right, to send, which if I do it, I usually modify it.
That's good.
Yep. And then, are those effective?
Yeah.
Change your subject in the first few lines.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, yes, sir.
Are there any plans to protect our shooting ranges? You know, Kitsap is about dead.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's the other tack they're going. They're trying to also outlaw lead for ammo.
Yeah.
Right. So that's on the. We got to watch the whole environmental movement towards banning lead. You got to watch the land use folks who are, again, trying to zone out shooting ranges. And maybe, I don't know if Brian can protect more about that.
2 times we have passed range protection legislation through Olympia. And it went to the governor's desk, and we've had 2 different governors veto it. And we introduce range protection legislation every year. Right now with you know, Lori Higgins is the chair of the committee that Jay's on. We don't get hearings on our bills. We can't even get the bill heard. So we need to change Olympia. But we also need to change the governor, because Jay Inslee is never going to sign a range protection bill. If we, you know, if we're able to change composition and get that bill to the governor, this will be the 3rd range protection bill.
Yeah.
And on Kitsap, actually Keeley is going to be out there on Saturday, and I just talked to the president of Kitsap today, and got some encouraging news. They had a meeting today, and it sounds like they may be making some progress in perhaps getting a settlement, which would be great news. But NRA's been involved. I've been working with them and trying to help them, and Keely's going to be out there. So that's, in my mind, that's probably one of the most important bills we could pass in Washington is range protection, because
We're trying to do it with Royce.
exactly.
Hey, Brian. You know, remember, we couldn't, but Pierce County, we've got the range protection bill in Pierce County. All these other counties need to step up. If you're not in Pierce County, get to your county council. You know, we got it through Pierce County, and it's,
that's a good point.
it's basically the NRA bill was done in Pierce
Pierce
County.
County Council meeting was held in Oregon.
That's right.
Right. All right. It's time for one more.
Can I ask a question about the background system? And if we're doing anything in the state to try to fix that? The
Next check.
it sucks. It doesn't work. It's broken. It's been broken since they put it in place.
That's a federal.
Right.
Yeah.
But is there anything being done on the state to make sure that if we are reporting stuff, that it's being reported correctly and timely? Because I think that's where
We've had
part of the problem.
several fix bills
Right.
in the last few years. One was exempting CPL holders from, I think that was one that we worked on. CPL holders did not have to go through this process. But we can talk more with you. Yeah. Let's go one more. Right?
I was just curious if anybody knew anything about this ammo tax nonsense happening in Seattle.
Oh,
Don't buy it there?
Yeah, I mean, don't buy it there, but the way I see it is if something like that passes in one place, it likes to bleed out.
Right. There's only idiots in St. County. You know what I mean?
You know,
Only 3/4.
Yeah, the thing with that is it's a violation of state law, because fortunately, one of the laws that we passed many years ago was called preemption. And it preempts local municipalities. And these are just the progressive, just trying to make a point, because they tried to ban guns in parks a number of years ago. They were sued and challenged under preemption, they lost. And if that were to pass, you know, and if they have it in their mind, they just had a committee hearing on it, so it's pending, you know, but if they pass it, it's going to be challenged, and it's going to get thrown out because it's a violation of preemption. One really interesting point about that, though, is there was an article in the Seattle Times about that ordinance, and it pointed out that there were, I think, maybe 20 dealers in the city of Seattle that would be impacted. But they pointed out that a lot of them weren't really storefront dealers, they were just FFLs who were there for the specific purpose of brokering internet sales.
Yeah.
And that's what we were saying during 594 is they're making this up because internet sales are brokered through FFL dealers. There aren't internet sales that aren't background checked.
Right.
And you know, but the Seattle Times, I sat in front of the Seattle Times, the editorial board, and with another guy, and we butchered the two people. We had the two proponents of 594 in circles, but the Seattle Times editorial board didn't care because they had an agenda, so they listened to all we had to say, and you know, you can tell that our points were, you know, they were hitting targets. They didn't care. They ended up editorializing in support of 594, but inadvertently, you know, they came up with this article that made the point that we were trying to make for the last year, that they were ignoring us.
Right.
Hey folks, I apologize, I gotta run, I think Graham's gotta run as well, but again, I'd be happy to meet with anyone, you know, at another time or down in Olympia. I can leave my contact info in the back there, and Graham, I think has his contact info as well.
If you want to take part in the campaign for the second most hated Jay's district is just a little bit north and east of here. Yeah, so, you know, I don't know where all you are from. You know, right now, we are in the 30th district. You know, they talked about the special election going on right now. You know, look into this race, get involved, look for candidates. There's probably going to be an important Senate race in the 5th district.
That's right.
So, you know, that's going to be a critical district next year. So, just because you live here doesn't mean you can't, you know, travel a little bit to help somebody. They've got a more critical race than where you live. So, these guys are your champions. So, thank you guys.
All right, well, Brian's already up here. We wanted to take just a minute to talk to you about an issue that is currently going on here in Washington.
Okay, so back on the initiative front, how many people here are familiar with Initiative 1401?
Yeah. I got some questions.
Okay.
Can we get it quiet so we can hear, all right?
Initiative 1401 bans the sale and transfer of a lot of products, products that are associated with a lot of endangered species. The bottom line is what they're going after is ivory. It's a ban on the sale and transfer of ivory. So, you know, why do we care about that? There are a lot of, I mean, I've got a 45, I've got a set of ivory grips on a 45. There are a lot of collector's guns that have ivory. Old shotguns have ivory beads. There's, you know, presentation boxes with ivory. A lot of hunters have knives with ivory handles. You know, you may have an ivory chest set that got passed down. You may have, you know, there's all kinds of products, jewelry and items that have ivory. And if 1401 passes, you could keep them, but you would not be able to sell or transfer. You couldn't give them away. There could not be a chance for possession. So it basically is taking your property and it's making it worthless. Guess who's bankrolling? Paul Allen, one of the billionaire supporters of 594. And let me point out one. I mean, this, you can't make this stuff up. But here's a billionaire, who's allegedly concerned about poaching in Africa. You know, you selling your grandfather's chess set is going to have nothing to do. And then we're talking about legal ivory that was legally imported. It was legally worked into a legal product. You own it and possess it legally now. You can never sell it. But Paul Allen wrote into his initiative one exemption. an exemption for musical instruments. Why do you suppose he did that? What's that? I'm not sure what that is.
That's his museum in Seattle.
Okay, well, so maybe you know more than I do, but
Hundreds of guitars, we got ivory.
okay, well there you go. There's another reason that I had heard about was in Olympia, the Seattle Symphony was opposing the bill, and you know, because a lot of their instruments, musical instruments, violins, violin bows, have ivory. So they were opposing the bill. Well, the bill died, and that's why we have the initiative on the ballot. So when it was being drafted, I have it on very good inside information. It's the Seattle Symphony reached out to Paul Allen. Paul Allen's a big financial supporter of the Seattle Symphony. And they said, you know, this is a problem for us. Can you exempt us? So he wrote in an exemption for, you know, for his elitist buddies in the Seattle Symphony. Well, if selling ivory is bad, then selling ivory is bad. It's kind of like the safe storage thing. Why are you singling us out? You're singling out one item that he happens to be connected with. And if selling ivory is bad for elements, then it's all bad for elements. Either it's all bad or nothing's bad. That's just, it's more elitist hypocrisy. So be aware that's on the ballot. It came because we were successful in defeating legislation in Olympia. And be prepared in 2016 because we've talked about bills coming. I'm really concerned that if we are able to hold the line, we very likely could see another gun initiative on the ballot in 2016. So this battle's not going away, folks.
Thank you, Brian. All right, I'll be brief. Oh. I'll try to go through this rather quickly. I know we're a little bit behind our schedule. But I'm going to talk to you, like I said, about some of the tips that we have for contacting your lawmakers effectively and some of the tools we have available to you. So the first thing you need to do is establish a relationship. Like I said, your lawmakers already talked about this at length. Make sure you're meeting with your lawmakers now while they're not in session, while they're home, and you can get a hold of them and you just call them and say, hey, I want to have a cup of coffee. I want to have 20 minutes to sit down with you and meet with you. Start establishing and building that relationship so that when you call them during session, they're going to answer your call. So that's the most important thing you can do starting now. Once you've reached out, started building that relationship, come session time, make sure you do your homework. Do not go to Olympia and say, I want you to vote pro-gun. Your lawmaker's going to look at you and say, well, okay, on what? There might be 4, 5, 6 gun bills. You need to go in there, reference a specific bill, talk about why you're supporting it, why you're opposing it, and make sure that you speak with them about a particular piece of legislation and not just go in there with generalities, because generalities aren't going to get you anywhere. This particular bill is harmful to gun owners. Here's why. It's going to get you a heck of a lot further. So make sure you do your research before you go meet with your lawmaker. So one of the tools we have available to you is NRA-ILA.org. Again, this is the political arm of the NRA. This is our website. We have fact cards on a whole host of issues. We've faced it anywhere in this country. There's a fact card on it. So it'll help you when you're starting your research on some of these issues that you're going to face here in Washington, as we've already faced some of them in years previous. You can also sign up for our legislative alerts. I know Brian and the legislators mentioned that. These alerts go out when you need to contact your lawmakers. We will keep you apprised every step of the way. When those are introduced, when they're in committee, when they leave committee. And they all have take action options. You click on that take action option, and it will route you to the ability to directly contact your lawmaker when it's important, when things are coming up for a vote. So if you do want to sign up for our legislative alerts, Brian alluded to, we have an orange card inside the folder each of you all got. Be sure to fill that out. Yes, that folder this gentleman's handing up. Take a minute or two to fill that out. If you don't want to fill that out, maybe my clicker, there we go. If you have your cell phone on you, you can pull out your cell phone real quick and text WA Rights, Washington Rights, to 52886. A prompt will come up to ask you to put in your email address and your name. That will also enroll you in our Frontlines program, our volunteer program, and you'll be signed up to get our legislative alerts. So again, as bills are progressing, as things are happening, you will then be able to be aware and then take action on those things. So, established our relationship here at home. You've done your homework, now it's time to make contact. There are a couple of different methods of making contact with your lawmakers. The most effective, let me back up. Whenever you are going to be contacting your lawmaker, make sure you're always keeping the platinum rule in mind. Now, what the heck is that? So all of you have heard of the golden rule, I'm sure. Treat others the way that you want to be treated. The platinum rule is treat others the way that they want to be treated. Make sure that you're approaching your lawmakers with respect. They work very hard, even those that don't necessarily agree with us, they still work very hard for their constituents. Make sure you're always being polite and respectful, and especially make sure that you're being incredibly polite to the staff. Staff members are dealing with constituents all day, every day, and if you approach that staff member and you're angry, or you're yelling, or you're using profanity, they're not going to patch you through to that lawmaker. They're going to do everything they can to make sure you don't get into that office to speak with your representative. So make sure you're always being polite and respectful. Even when you're upset, you can be upset and still be respectful. So, like I was saying, a couple of different ways to contact your lawmakers. The absolute most effective way is in person. Take the time, if you can, to go visit them in Olympia. Make sure you make an appointment, like I said. Be polite to the staff. Go ahead and set an appointment so you know that you're going to be able to see that lawmaker. They're not going to be on the floor voting on something while you're trying to communicate with them. And keep in mind that you're probably not going to have a whole lot of time. So this is where your research is going to really come in handy. You're not going to have 4 hours to sit down with your representative during session. They don't have 4 hours to give you, or some of them would, I'm sure. You're probably going to have 10, 15 minutes on a busy day to speak with your representative. So make sure that you've done your homework. Like I said, you're referencing a specific bill or specific 2 bills, and you're giving them the highlights of exactly why this is bad for gun owners. Or on the flip side, why this is great for gun owners. If you can't make it over to Olympia, the next best thing is a phone call. Again, that personal interaction is going to be a lot more valuable than just something through the internet, which we'll get to emails in a minute. But making sure that you're contacting your representative, again, you're not going to have a whole lot of their time when they're in session, which is why it's really important to establish and build those relationships now, so that whenever you do call, they'll answer your phone call, as opposed to you just being another number that's dialing in through the switchboard. But again, make sure you're respectful, you're polite, and you're clear and concise. Shorten it. You're not going to have a couple of hours to ramble on about everything you want to say. Your lawmaker's going to have a tight schedule, so make sure you take advantage of all of the time that you have with that lawmaker. Like I said, in-person and phone calls are more effective. If you can't do either, the next best thing is to send an email. Your representative kind of alluded to. If they get the same exact form email 5 or 6, dozen times, all right, this is the same email, this is coming from somewhere else. My constituent didn't take the time to write this. But if you personalize that email, it's going to get a lot more attention. Also, they mentioned earlier, emails, they get a ton of them. They get inundated with them. They probably get thousands and thousands over the course of a session. So 5, 10, 15 emails on a piece of legislation, not going to get a whole lot of attention. 50, 100 emails from their constituents within a couple-day time frame, that's going to get their attention because now people are paying attention, and so are they. So one of the tools we have available to you on NRA-ILA.org is our Contact Your Legislator option. We have this option where you can type in your zip code, it will geocode you. You can pick email, yes, Twitter, and Facebook too. Have all these options to go ahead and reach out to your lawmakers. You have a template, but as you can see, it says insert your text here. We're not giving you a form letter, we're giving you an ability to contact your lawmaker, but it's up to you to craft whatever message you want to send to them. We also have these widgets in all of our alerts that require action. There will be a big red take action or click here to take action button in our ILA alerts now that will direct you to this page. It'll give you a little summary on what exactly we're asking you to take action on, and it will then allow you to email, tweet, Facebook your representative right from that ILA alert. So I do encourage you, if you're not already on our alert list, to please sign up for that. You mentioned social media. Like I said, you do have the option to do that from our website, through our ILA alerts. You can also do it on your own. If you're a fan of your representative's Facebook page, you can go ahead and Facebook them, tweet at them. Social media is monitored a lot more closely, we found, than inboxes are. So what might take 100 emails might only take 5 or 6 tweets to go ahead and get that lawmaker's attention. So again, it's another effective way to go ahead and reach out to your lawmaker and say, hey, I'm concerned about this, let's chat. Again, like I said, you can do this all from our ILA website and through the links in the alerts. Speaking of Facebook, of course, if you're not already a fan, I do encourage you to go on and like NRA-ILA Frontlines. It's our grassroots Facebook page. You'll be able to get updates on what we're doing here in Washington and around the country, get articles on some of the things going on federally. We posted pictures from last night. I'm sure we'll post some pictures from tonight, tomorrow morning. So again, I just encourage you to like it. It'll show up in your newsfeed periodically so you know what's going on. You also can go to our grassroots website. So I've talked a lot about NRA-ILA.org, which is all of NRA-ILA website. It's great for research. It's great for signing up for alerts. We also have a specific grassroots website, NRA-ILA-Frontlines.com. This is where we post all of our events that are going on. This is where some of you probably were routed through this website. You didn't even know it when you RSVP'd for this event. So if you want to know what's going on here in Washington, it's NRA-ILA-Frontlines.com. And you'll be able to see on a map, select Washington, and see kind of some of the events that are going on near when you click. All right, so we've established our relationship, done our homework, we've chosen our method. Now it's time to actually communicate with your lawmaker. So, like I said earlier, you're not going to have a whole lot of time during session to really focus on, one-on-one contact with them. So it's very important to make your case, put it together before you go visit them. And in making your case, there are 3 main things to remember. The first thing is that you need to establish credibility. This is something that is easily done through building that relationship. All of our lawmakers cannot be experts on every single thing that they're going to have to vote on, which is why they rely on lobbyists like Brian and their constituents to help inform them on why bills are good, why bills are bad. So if you are communicating with your lawmaker regularly, and you go in and you're like, hey, I want to talk to you about this gun bill, they're going to immediately say, okay, this individual I know is well-informed and well-educated on the gun issue. I'm going to take what they have to say seriously. So once you've established credibility, remember to be clear. Like I said, you're not going to have a whole lot of time to speak with these representatives, so make sure you're clear, you're concise, and you're sticking to the main points, which leads me to keep it simple. You're not going to have a whole lot of time to delve into every single piece of legislation that is on guns or on any other issue with your representative. So it's important that you pick a few main points, stick to those, and communicate those to your lawmaker. Hey, these are the 3 top reasons why this bill is going to be bad for gun owners. You also can put something together. You can take our alerts as a starting point for your lawmaker and leave it with them so they have something after you've left to reference, because you're probably not the only meeting they've had that day. And it'll be nice to have a little refresher. Oh yeah, that's what we talked about when I met with Jerry. So once you all contact your lawmakers, that's obviously a very important first step, but we also need your help to spread the word and get other folks to contact their lawmakers as well. We have strength in numbers. Like Brian said, the reason that lawmakers take his calls, not because he's Brian, even though he's great, it's because of all of the NRA members we have all across the state. And those lawmakers know that it's not just Brian Judy walking in, it's Brian Judy representing the thousands of NRA members who are voters in their district. And that's part of why we need all of you to stay active. Hey, I'm an NRA member. Hey, I'm an NRA activist, and this is why I think this bill is bad. And again, telling everyone else that they need to contact their lawmakers as well, and showing them that it's not difficult, it doesn't take a whole lot of time. And the very last thing I'll say about contacting your lawmakers, something that a lot of folks don't do very well, is following up. Follow up with your lawmaker if they voted the way you asked them to thank them. Let them know you're paying attention, you appreciate that they took that hard vote, because in Olympia it wasn't an easy vote. Might have been for their conscience, but certainly it was a fight for them. And also follow up with your lawmakers who don't vote the way you want and ask them why. Again, remember the platinum rule, be respectful, be courteous. Say, hey, we met on January 18th. Probably too early for a meeting, but let's just say that's when you met with your lawmaker. Reference that date and say, this is what we spoke about. It seemed like we were on the same page and then you voted this way. Can you explain to me why? Make them explain to you why they voted the way that they did. I'll hold them accountable. It's part of our job as citizens to do that. So, obviously, we have Michael Bloomberg. He's not going anywhere, neither are we. But it doesn't have to be Bloomberg's Washington. If we all fight together, we can go ahead and make sure that Washington is a little bit of a better place in regards to gun rights. I will take questions, but before I do want to bring our election volunteer coordinator, Jared Gibbs, up for just a couple of minutes to talk to you all about what we did and what he did here, right here in your backyard in the fight against 594 and why all of you need to help him and us moving forward. So Jared?
Hi, I'm Jared Gibbs and I live in Gig Harbor. And how many people here have sent in their ballots for this election? Pretty good. The state attorney, the state auditor says we're going to get about 25%. And like you've heard tonight, they've got to have some help down in Olympia. And we're not going to change anything in this state until we change the legislature and we change the persons in the governor mansion. So you think that we live in a blue state and we're surrounded by Democrats and liberals and we can't do anything about it. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not the truth. What you've heard here tonight and the tools that they've talked about, they work. And you can also infuse that with your own methods. We formed a little group in Gig Harbor, and we had an entrenched legislator over there named Larry Sequist. And he had been over there his 4 terms, very powerful, chairman of the Education Committee, in charge of billions of dollars. We beat him, and every one of our representatives in the 26th district now, we turned that district red. And that's the first time in 40 years that district has been red. And I'm telling you, we did it with grassroots activism, with just a few people and no money. And what we did is like you heard, we met our candidates. We got to know them. And some of you folks are in the Rotary, some of you in the Chamber, some of you in the other, whatever. We took our 3 candidates to the gun club. And we signed them up as members. We had them come to the board meeting. We had them come to the range. We had them take the safety course. We had them shoot. Okay? We sat down with them and read 594 with them. All 18 pages. It's not Obamacare. So, and collaborating with them and the gun clubs, and it can be the Rotary, it can be anything. We established, there's 1,880 members in the Gig Harbor Sportsman Club. And that is a powerful vote. You don't know until you do the research in these elections that sometimes they only won by 400 votes. Or they only, a lot of us live in swing districts. They can go either way. And if you can help make a difference on 1,500 to 1,800 votes toward our candidate, you can win. So we built those relationships, just like you heard tonight. When we call down there, or the president of our gun club calls down there and talks to them, they pick up the phone. They don't put them on hold, they pick up the phone. That's true, it works. We did a little thing. We went to the meetings, or we had them come out on public nights and talk to people. We took their yard signs. You heard about the NRA grades. You'd be amazed how many people are pro-gun, whether or not they're NRA members or not. But we took their yard signs of our candidates, and we just took a white cardboard, Mr. Lester and I, and we put A rated by the NRA, we stapled it to their sign, and we took it to the gun clubs, we took it to the pawn shops, we took it to the gun stores. So people that would go in there, they would know who the candidate is and what his grade was. That didn't cost us a penny to do. And at the end of the day, Michelle Collier over there in the 26th district, she unseated an entrenched bureaucrat that had a D rating in the NRA and send him packing. So the point I want to make is that grassroots is very powerful, and it works. I mean, people from maybe even here from Pierce County, and Brian doesn't like petitions and initiatives, I do. I just took a small group of people and got 38,648 signatures to stop this building that they want to build over here in Pierce County. I'm here to tell you folks, what you're hearing from Lexy and Brian, it'll work. And I've seen it work, and we did it with few people and no money. So we got to take this state back. We can do it. Like you said, Terry Hinkle here in the 30th District, you know, I saw one person out in the parking lot there that had a Terry Hinkle sticker on it. We get her elected as the 30th, we got a good chance of flipping the House. Inslee's one and done. We get somebody good to run against him. You know, but even the Democrats don't like him. But we can take this state back. And I'm here to say, every one of you guys here have got friends, or you belong to a club or association. Take it to them, get to know your candidates like you heard them say here, and educate them on the gun issue. And you'll find out that it will bring a lot of reward to taking the state back and stop these people. And these people are dangerous, and they want to take our guns. So I just wanted you to know that just a small group of people with bad knees got it done with no money, so it can be done. Thanks.